All right, so let's dive into today's questions. First up today is Jared via email. Like this question. My wife thinks it's wild that I don't want to retire, but I love my job. I want to do it until I can't. I'm currently 58 and my wife is 59 and she's ready to retire ASAP. We live mostly off my income and save hers or do fun things, vacations, etc. Can she go ahead and retire, take Social Security, and us live off of that and my income? Are there blind spots we aren't thinking about? Hey, Jared, it's great that you love your job. Purpose is a big part of this. You know, when we walk our clients into retirement, that's a big discussion we have. Are you retiring to something and not from something? And if you still find purpose in your job, there's no reason that you have to quit, but there is a reason that you need to be prepared when that day comes. And I think that's really the mindset here, is not retirement, but as we said at the open of the show, Janet, it's about financial independence. You and I both have a personal plan that a date in the future is going to come where we are going to reach financial independence, but that doesn't mean we're going to leave our jobs.
Right. We talk about here at GenWealth the ready to retire process.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a date when we are ready to retire. It doesn't mean that we necessarily will. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But you want to know that you're ready. And so, Jared, that's really the primary question that you have to ask in this process. Are you ready to retire? Because sometimes you don't get to choose that. But also, are you ready for your wife to retire? When you get to your question here about can she go ahead and retire, take Social Security, and you guys live off of her Social Security and your retirement income, we've got to answer the question about whether your household is ready for that in terms of income.
Yeah, so what he's saying, if we go back to that question, we live mostly off currently my income and save hers or do fun things. Mm-hmm. I think his mindset there is if we lose her income by her retiring, she can take Social Security, and then we will then be living off of that and his income, and maybe cut back on the fun things, maybe cut back on the vacations. But I think the primary thought process here, Jared, is what are you saving for retirement, and where is that going to put you? If your wife no longer works, does she have a retirement savings plan and that's no longer going to be able to be contributed to?
You're taking away from those additional contributions. You're also, by the way, and I know you know this part, she's not going to be eligible for Social Security for a little bit longer. So what do you do in that gap? Mm-hmm. And then another gap that is very important to consider is between the time that she retires and the time that she's eligible for Medicare. So the money that you guys have been, receiving from her income, you've utilized that to pay for vacations and other fun stuff, but did she have health insurance covered from her employer, or is she potentially on your plan? If she's on your plan, then it may be no harm, no foul on the health insurance, but that is a big expense, Scott, that a lot of times people don't think about because it's not primarily coming out of their pockets.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And, when we talk about being ready to retire but not necessarily retiring, Jared even says it, I love my job, I want to do it until I can't.
Yeah.
We don't get to control when we can't. And that's a big part of this. People often don't get to choose when they retire, so it's good to be prepared as early as you can be prepared for that financial independence. In fact, the Employee Benefit Research Institute did a study that said most people do expect to retire at age 65, but the median retirement age in the United States is 62. 7 out of 10 retirees stop working before age 65, and the reasons: 32% experienced downsizing at their employer, or a closure or a reorganization. In essence, they lost their job for whatever reason it was. 31% because of health or a disability. 13% found they were needing to care for a spouse or another family member. And 8% said they lacked a skill set that a job change would require. So two big issues there, the loss of a job or the loss of your health, and we don't get to control either of those. So another reason you have to be prepared for potentially an earlier retirement than maybe you want.
One other thing, and nobody likes to talk about this, but we know it's real. This is not supposed to happen, but it does. Another thing that we're aware of is when people start talking about retirement, like, hey, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. If you're up there on the pay scale, and the older you get, usually the more you make, sometimes an employer will go ahead and let you go because they can hire somebody else in cheaper and go ahead and transition those funds and do something else with the excess that they would have been paid paying you at age 65 or 66, whatever. So, Scott, that's another reason. And it's kind of a sub point to one of these as far as downsizing and reorganization and everything, but it's absolutely real. You've got to be prepared and know that you can retire if the decision on the timeline is out of your control.
Yeah, I think what I would encourage, Jared, for you to do is get you and your wife together and call and schedule an appointment with a Gen Wealth financial advisor. Walk through the Ready to Retire process. You can do that by calling 866-653-PLAN. That's toll free, 866-653-7526. Go through the Ready to Retire process. He says, are there blind spots we aren't thinking about? That's what that process is meant to do. Build a retirement income plan that shows you if your wife retires now and if you continue to work for 3 years, 4 years, different scenarios. Where does that put you from an income perspective? And you're back to the start of our show when we said only 47% of pre-retirees believe they will have enough money in guaranteed income sources to cover their basic expenses. That's the first step in that process. Where are you at on guaranteed income in retirement? Whenever that occurs, do you have enough to cover your basic expenses, and then layer in your investments from your 401k and other investments to determine what kind of monthly income you can stack on top of your guaranteed income sources. That gives you a clear picture of what it's going to look like. And then the other blind spots are taxes, their long-term care, health care cost. That has to get figured into play here too before you make a monumentally important decision, such as one of you retiring. This is our question of the week. Congratulations, Jared, for that. And we're going to send you a Get Ready for the Future show tumbler for being the question of the week. We just would like you to email us again to claim it. Just send an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. So Jared will stare at that tumbler and remind himself that he needs to call and
email.
Yes, or email, but then later, yes, call and schedule that appointment with a Gen Wealth advisor.
Yep.
Great question, though.